thing, I think Mr. Duncan's idea is great about looking at numbers, but as with mutual fund results, for example, since the Great Recession, it's really important when your timeline starts, because real per pupil expenditures in Falls Church fell dramatically in the wake of the Great Recession. So where you put your baseline is vitally important. The real inflation adjusted per pupil expenditures in Falls Church is below what it was in 2007, even 2013. So the latest number I have is fiscal year 16, so that bears some looking into. But the other thing, since this is my last time with you, I can't believe we're here arguing over these things or discussing over these things now. I don't want that to take away from everything that's been accomplished, because I'm frankly astonished at what we've accomplished. And I will be watching remotely next year, and I'm confident that we can make all this work. And I do think we have to realize the glass is 99% full. So I thank everyone.
And I'm going to go. I'm going to jump in. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Chair Gill, and school board members, and City Manager Shields. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to be able to share in the opportunity to talk about our budget work and the joint work that we've done together. I just want to just tip my hat to Vice Mayor Connolly for continuing with the zipper analogy. You know, it really is quite an accomplishment, sort of picking up on what Mr. Castillo just mentioned, how far we've come, and looking at that, at the process and projected excitement over the next couple of years as we complete the work of the high school and the 10-acre site and the like is really exciting. So thank you for pulling together that zipper. I have a couple of people that are here tonight. I just want to take a quick second to recognize. First is Kristen Michael. Kristen is here. She's our Chief Operating Officer with the schools. She works very closely with Ms. Bawa and Ms. Mester as well. Tricia Minson, who's our school's attorney, is here and works very closely with Carol Costry. John Brett, our communications person, is here. Works very closely with the communications folks here in the city on the general government side. And Michelle Kopic is also with us. Still here? Yeah, Michelle's still here. And Michelle is the budget director. So tonight, what I'll share with you is really a joint presentation. I just happen to be the point person that's sharing it with you. So with that, I'll try to move through these relatively quickly, because I think a lot of the conversations that you've had so far sort of pull in some of the conversations that we're going to be having as well. So let me start with sort of our priorities just as a division. Last year, when we had our time together where we had a nice meal and we sat down and we had a placemat set out for you, we have subsequently updated that placemat. And at your places this evening, you have in front of you a revised placemat, which is up here. This really, the piece that I think is important in this is not necessarily that the mission statement is the same, but that we are really committed to the three top line in dark blue ideas. The first is really doubling down and paying attention to International Baccalaureate for all students. That means that all of our classrooms in our system, regardless of whether or not National Baccalaureate classes or not, are infused with those and grounded with those practices associated with the approaches to learning and approaches to teaching that come from the International Baccalaureate program. We encourage all of our students and all of our staff and our community members to become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners as indicated by International Baccalaureate. As a consequence of that sort of notion of becoming an IB for all, there are some relative challenges for us, not just from an operational perspective with respect to getting students into classes that are aligned to the IB, but also, as sort of Mr. Castillo was mentioning earlier, making sure that all of our teachers are trained up in what do the approaches to learning and approaches to teaching look like. And that is something that we pay a lot of attention to make sure every single one of our classes are infused with those IB skills and knowledge. The second is really promoting and supporting this culture of care in our community. We believe strongly that in order for us to build really great humans in our school system, the first thing we need to be able to do is to build great relationships with them, along with our colleagues and their parents and families and the like. And through that, understanding the diversity that comes with our system, we are far more diverse now than we ever have been here in the city of Falls Church. And as a consequence of that, we're seeing more students that are coming in that are English language learners. We're seeing more students that are in special education. And as a function of that, all of those class sizes are smaller, and kind of goes back to that other conversation that we were having with respect to cost drivers in the system. And then lastly, we're about closing gaps. We really believe that when we say all in the City of Falls Church schools, we mean all. And we're committed to making sure that we provide an equitable educational program for every single student that hits our doors. And when we talk about equity in our system, what we mean is giving every student what they need at the right time in the right moment. And it's not the same for every kid. Equity doesn't mean equal. So ensuring that our students that are language learners get what they need in the area of language, making sure our special ed students get what they need, making sure that our really high-flying advanced academic students are all they need to accelerate and extend and enrich their own learning. And all of that sits on top of this idea of IB learner profile, which you see at the bottom of the placemat, which then builds on our slogan for the year, which is sharpening our 2020 vision. And we are really committed to ensuring that we have a really strong vision for what schooling in the City of Falls Church is going to look like now and into the future. So tonight, when you came to your places, City Council members, you found our t-shirt from this year's convocation. Some of you were there and maybe got one, so I'd invite you to pass that along perhaps to your child as a good sleeping shirt, because I think they're all extra larges, but anyway, something to take with you that really speaks to who we are as an organization. We have some really great news. This is just one piece of information that we want to share with you, and that's that our standards of learning, again, which is just one measure of success, for the first time in several years, hit the 90% pass rate in all 5 of the tested areas. So you look at reading, writing, mathematics, social studies, or history, and science. Pass rates in 2018-19 were 91, 90, 91, 95, and 91 respectively, compared to the state pass rates, which are on the far right. Again, that is baseline information for us. I think we would expect all of our students to achieve that goal. Yet we do struggle, and we struggle when we disaggregate data by our students that are in public, by our students who are in special education, to make sure that all of those students also are achieving at those high levels. But we do really well as a school system, and we have a lot to be proud of. Another point of pride for us, and this is more of an eye test than it is anything that you can read from your seat, but I do invite you, public, to really go out and look at our website. Just turned over a new website in the last 2 weeks. It's fantastic. We've got an app that's rolled out as of Thanksgiving. We would invite you to download the new app for the City of Falls Church schools. But this is the project update that came in October about high school project. It's been mentioned a couple of times tonight. Pictures that you see in there are not even where we are at this point. So just for example, you see the exterior waterproofing being installed there. You see rebar and anchors being installed. You don't even see the exterior walls in the foundation anymore because they've backfilled. The rebar has been all filled in. We've got slab on grade. We actually have our first ground floor that's covering underneath the gym. All of the classrooms and the like are being filled in. If you go onto our website, you can see the live camera feed during the day. It's even lit up at night a little bit, so you can even see it at night. But what's really kind of cool about it is if you know what you're looking at, it starts to make sense to you a little bit. So as you go on, and I would invite you to do that, look at the steel that's going up, and on the far right-hand side, if you look at camera 2, you will see the theater, where the theater stage is going to be, and you can begin to see the seating, the rake of the seating, and to the left of that, you envision what the main gym is going to look like and what the auxiliary gym is going to look like. But these reports are published monthly. We're really excited about having them out there because it does show what is the project status, what's our overview, how are we doing on our timeline, and how are we doing on our budget. And right now I'm proud to submit to you tonight, as we head into our budget process, that we are on budget project. We've got a long way to go. A lot of our risk has been mitigated with the excavation that's been done. We've got 2 big cranes out there that are slinging about 80 pieces of steel a day, so we're going up quick. just to sort of contextualize tonight's presentation, I wanted to take a second just to talk a little bit about last year's budget approach, because I think it's important in the context of what we're doing this year. Last year, what some of our focused and really high priorities were on employee compensation, not unlike it has been in the past. Last year, we were able to provide a step increase all of our employees and a 1% cost of living adjustment as well. We increased our substitute pay by $2 an hour, and we also addressed some of those increased insurance costs that you've heard of from the general government side as well. Coming year, we did that through meeting guidance and through our strong relationship and our agreement to share the revenue that we had discussed. We did, however, in order to meet that guidance, have to take some pretty significant reductions. So we did reduce our budget by nearly $600,000 by looking at realignments to meet our budget guidance. Those were done through a reduction of approximately 5 positions. We looked at identified savings from central office facilities rental. As you know, last year we made the move from 800 West Broad to 50 South Washington, so we were able to realize some one-time money there. We saw some salary turnover, some of those reductions, as the city manager was discussing earlier. We took some of those. We had a number of positions that went unfilled for a significant period of time, but that we were able to capture some of that savings for. We also saw some savings in our related to retiree health care. We saw some savings based on some projected closing of programs, participants leaving our OPEB or our post-employment benefit and the like, and we're able to meet that $600,000 through realignment. So when you talk about your belt, or when you talk about sort of going on a diet, I would submit to you that by cutting up by nearly more than $500,000 to make our budget work with guidance was meeting the spirit of, I think, what we were all trying to accomplish in the context of building a new high school. Here you've seen these pie charts before, but they certainly summarize what our current year's budget looks like. In terms of our revenue, 82.7% of our funding comes from you all in the general government, and the state provides us 13.5% of our revenue, and those together combine for 96%. The rest of that comes through a couple of different sources. On the expenditure side, and this is, I think, really an important component relative to the conversation that sort of came up at the end of the earlier Q&A, is that 85.4% of our total budget is in compensation. It's in people. And when we compensate people at a 1% cost, it's significantly more expensive to do than it is on the general government side. And that's not to suggest that one is better than the other. It just is. It is a significant difference when we talk about compensation. So when you look at our revenue source comparison, and I think this is interesting just in terms of being able to look at it from, and these data come from our Washington area boards of education, but it talks about sort of where its money come from. So if you look at, for example, on the left-hand side, Alexandria City's percentage of local revenue is 78.5%, and they get 15.8% from the state. In Arlington County, it's 82% from the local government and 13% from the state. And then if you scroll over to us, we're slightly higher in Falls Church from the local percentage compared to the state. And there's one major reason you see in this slide, also in the cost per pupil slide, that our percentage is much greater than it is in many other of the surrounding jurisdictions, and the primary driver in that is our class size. We've made a commitment in the Falls Church to maintain a low class size, so we're staffing our classrooms at 22, 24 to 1 versus other surrounding jurisdictions that are staffing their classrooms at 28 and 30 to 1. So when we staff at those kinds of ratios, that instantly drives up the cost per pupil. It also requires that there's more local cost borne because the state amount runs through the local composite index. So there's the standards of quality. The state tells you here's what you have to have. We're going to give you some money to help pay for that based on your local composite index. But the state does not account for staffing ratios of 22 or 24 to 1. they're staffing at a higher ratio than we are in Arlington, so they're